All right. Hello. Welcome, everybody, to our new episode. We are going to be talking about belief versus reality. So here we go. In relating what you believe you see with the eyes to reality, to understanding, you lose the belief for the reality. Hang on a minute. Just a minute here. All right. Know what I've done here. I've done something. Okay, back to the beginning. In relating what you believe you see with the eyes to reality, to understanding, you lose the belief for the reality. And in that way, the God idea that you are forever experiencing, being as thinking or conscious identity, forms a new concept, less personal and more nearly approximating the real.
Yeah, that's a lot of words.
Yeah, it is a lot of words. What do you want to add to that? Go for it.
Well, fundamentally, what we're talking about today is that human beings are really like faced 100% of their time with this view of themselves as a two-legged animal, as Margaret would describe it, as human beings among a million or several million other human beings, all of them independently trying to do their best to live and move and have being and all that sort of thing. And we sort of forget, like every 5 seconds, we forget that the action that looks like Betty doing something is actually mind functioning, looking like Betty doing something. So Margaret says, in relating what you believe, see, I believe Betty's doing something, in relating that with the eyes to reality, and the reality is that that's doing me. The action of the God idea looks like Betty doing something and not the other way around. But we forget that all the time. The thinking that's going on is never personal thinking. There's no such animal, no personal thinking. The thinking going on is the action of intelligence, the action of mind. It's not a personal thing. But we forget that, that was 5 seconds ago, and we forget that. So we start all over again saying, wait a minute, I'm not out of ideas because this thing is not the thinking thing. And so then I think. Do you know? It gets to be double talk. But the fundamental fact is that I can't be without action. I can't ever be shortchanged, nothing to do, not knowing where to go or what to do, because it isn't personal. It isn't like something has to help Betty out. It's more like something in action has Betty show up. And there's a big distinction there. Do you see that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, um, it's almost automatic. It is automatic, I think, in human living to believe that we live and move and have being as persons. And that's just the view of the action that's going on all the time, called infinite mind, infinitely being itself, turning upon itself, seeing itself, working with itself, whatever. But that action is what shows up as if there was something here doing something. And all that is taking the individuality of mind and saying, open up. Ah, now what do you see? You see Betty? Uh-huh. Keep going. Open up. Now what do you see? Oh, you see a world and a lot of other people. Uh-huh. And keep opening up. Oh, what do you see now? Oh, a lot of people. Are they really out there? Looks like they are. Convinces me. Seeing's believing. That's what I've been taught. And then I think, who's saying that? Betty or me? And I think, well, what happens if I think it's Betty? So believe me, over many episodes, I have thought it was Betty. And guess what? That's the short end of the stick. Pretty soon, Betty didn't know what to do. Betty didn't have the experience of freedom. Betty didn't feel too well, or some other uncomfortable circumstance that kept saying, Betty can't do that. Remember who's doing that. Remember where that source is, where the action is. It's not Betty. But I don't want to hear that, Betty can too hear it. She can do it too. And then I find out that it isn't like there's really a choice. It's like you want to be comfortable, you want to be healthy, wealthy, and wise, or do you want to be like a yo-yo, up one day and down the next, and up and down and up and down and up and down? Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. Now what? That's the choice.
And I think in reality, it fluctuates between those two. It fluctuates between knowing who you are and acknowledging that fact, and the ups and downs when you get bought into that this, is what can cause and control anything, which is what the lie is. So there's and then I'm reminded that it's almost, if I can be present to being, acknowledging the divinity that's present, and just keep walking on, doing what's right in front of me to do, what comes to me to do with no argument, just walk right on, then things start to open up. And it's almost too simple.
Yeah, I like that phrase, no argument.
Yeah.
Because when there's no argument, you can leave it alone.
Yeah.
It's the argument that hooks you.
Right.
I do want to do that. I'm going to eat that ice cream tonight.
Right.
Even though I know I shouldn't have it or something,
That's right.
Intelligence tells me no, but I'm going to have it anyway.
Right.
And guess what? Then I have the being hooked by Betty that has Betty encountering all kinds of crazy stuff.
Right.
Like overweight and uncomfortable and no energy and you name it, all those things that go along with indulging the human druthers instead of living intelligently.
Mm-hmm.
So what it is like having a conversation with yourself. You think that the world is telling you something, or you think that you know better, or you think there is a choice. And you think that it's a whole universe of people doing the same thing because that's what it looks like.
Right.
But then you find out that there's only one thing going on. And you think, you made that all up? Shame on you, Betty, And then I think, how did that happen? And then I remember that little simple statement that really is the keynote of science. All is infinite mind. And, we sort of breeze over that word infinite.
Mm-hmm.
Infinite, which has no beginning, no end, no limit, inexhaustible, measureless. We sort of breeze over that, which lets us forget that the whole universal picture that we play in is one thing going on. And it's all about being itself, and having this piece to play the game with called Betty, in my case. And there might be people out there, I don't know, but I have no way to function with anything external to mind because what constitutes me is mind.
Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing else going on.
Right.
So I play this game of Betty because I just don't know any better, you know? If I knew better, I'd do better. But guess what? The reality that's present, having Betty show up, is so powerful that even a teeny tiny smidgen of acknowledging that frees up the whole picture.
Right.
And what I do is live myself in this series of freedom, forget, freedom, forget, freedom, forget.
Right. And I think that's the way that all of this is experienced. And I
That's
think
the
that
game we play as
I
human
think
beings.
it's the constant though. It's not like, oh my God, I'm messing up. It's like, no, you get sucked into the picture. You think that this is causative. You get into that embroilment, and then you step back and say, wait a minute.
Yeah,
And you get with the facts,
yeah,
and things start to open up.
yeah. And the thing that makes that possible, the thing that makes that true, is that reality is one, present, always present, whole, perfect, complete, never goes anywhere. And what I do is in and out of dipping into my own self-awareness.
Right. Yeah, I like that, dipping into it, because I think it's really true. And the more that we have an opinion and a belief about that which we're observing in our life, the harder it is to be free to acknowledge divinity present.
Yep.
And perfection functioning, because we're tied into a blinder that we've put on ourselves called our opinion, our judgment, our resentments, all that kind of stuff that adds the fuel and the resistance to actually just being free.
Yep. I have the funniest story. I had a friend this week visiting, and the comment she made just cracked me up. She says, I brought this food for the dog. And she says, he doesn't like it. But she said it was the smallest package in the cupboard and I didn't have to have a big bag to bring it. So she brought it. And, and the dog wouldn't eat it. So every day we were faced with the dog itself. And the dog ate treats almost all the time because she didn't have any food the dog liked. And she said, we might as well throw that in the trash, which we did. And I still crack up thinking about it because we do that to ourselves all the time.
Right. Well, you know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of the story about the peanut butter sandwiches.
Yes. Yeah, you should tell that.
People. I don't know it as near as well as you do, Juan. Go ahead.
Oh, well, there was construction workers on a job, and they all sat around, took a break, sat around at lunchtime under a tree, and were talking and stuff. And this guy opened his bag up and he pulled out his sandwich and he looked at it and he says, peanut butter sandwiches. I hate peanut butter sandwiches. And he threw it as far as he could throw it. And the second day that occurred, the fellow sitting next to him said, hey, buddy, why don't you tell your wife you don't like peanut butter sandwiches? He says, you leave my wife out of this. I make my own peanut butter sandwiches.
Right.
Same idea.
Yeah, very good. Well, one of the things that I wanted to reiterate, since we were still at the intro, although excellent, fun conversation, we are looking at and referencing What is the Idea? It's a pamphlet by Margaret Laird. It was actually an address that she gave in person that is now in printed format, and you can get a really, really good deal on it at the scientificmetaphysics.org website. I think the PDF download of it right now for a limited time is only $1.50. As soon as we're done highlighting it, the price on that goes up. So if you're interested in that, just go out to scientificmetaphysics.org. And you can go and purchase that. So I just want to say that. The other thing that I wanted to say is that we are sponsored by the Institute of Metaphysical Science at scientificmetaphysics.org. It was established in 1959 as the Margaret Laird Foundation, researching, exploring, living, and teaching the science of being and the causal nature of consciousness. So that is who sponsors Rethink Life.
Take a deep breath.
Take a deep breath. That's right. So I got through all that. If there's any comments that you have, comments, questions, anything like that, just type them into the comments. And if we're live and you're listening to us live, which we are right now, then we will bring them in and we will engage with them and answer them or address them or what have you. So you guys are fully invited to participate. And now we are going to dive into the prepared material for this episode. Unless there's anything else you want to add.
No, you keep
You're
going.
good? Okay. All right. Excellent. Okay. So on page 26 of What is the Idea? Margaret Laird writes, let us keep ever before us that this unique individualized ego that you call yourself is the conscious experience, the I or us, the mind, that the world calls God.
Yep. Yep. The source and condition of all existence is that.
Right.
The God idea.
Yep. And Margaret Laird also says on page 26, the fact that I consciously am is proof of the fact that consciousness is life.
Yep. Just think about it. If you're not conscious, nothing's going on for you.
Right. Right.
You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, on page 279 of Science and Health, and starting on line 26, Mary Baker Eddy wrote it this way. A logical and scientific conclusion is reached only through the knowledge that there are not two bases of being, matter and mind, but one alone, mind.
Yep.
And in your book, Mind is the Athlete, on page 193, you write, consciousness, mind, constitutes the one being or existence. The one mind or consciousness has man. Man does not have mind or consciousness. So consciousness or mind constitutes man, is the way that I would say it.
One mind or consciousness has man.
Right.
Man doesn't have one mind or consciousness.
Correct.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay.
And I'm reminded of, when we're saying, like when we're looking at this, that you call yourself the unconscious experience, the I or us, the mind, that the world calls God. And things don't appear as that a lot of the time. But the fact that I consciously am is proof of the fact that consciousness is life. And it's not this.
It doesn't leave that out.
But it's way bigger. It includes it all.
It's all there is.
Right.
I am all. I'm not just, we tend to think that we're making this thing important.
Right.
And it isn't, there isn't a this thing.
Right.
Like space, like the air we breathe.
Yeah. Like
water is for the fish. Consciousness. And then what shows up if I were playing a game, I talk about Monopoly a lot. I can have the hat or the shoe and I get to move around the board and collect $200 and all that. Well, that little thing is Betty. But the thing moving me around the board is the thing that has me be. Yeah.
Yep. All right.
Yeah, it's just, we keep saying these things over and over, but believe me, every time you give it a whirl in your consideration of what's going on, it leaves a little bit more opening for, So the authority for living, the power, the presence for health and wealth and well-being, all of that is really divine being that's present whenever Betty shows up and wherever Betty shows up. And it's never anywhere else. It's always there. It's the only thing that's really there. And my view says, you know how you walk down the street and there's a bush off about a block away and you think, Oh, that's a big dog. I'll go over on the other side of the street. Don't have to run into the dog. But when you get down there, it's a bush. Well, being is kind of that way. We think this thing lives and moves and has being. We really do. We got proof of it. It talks. Here it is. But what it forgets is that while it looks this way, the being of it is not housed in this look. This is just a point of view.
Could you call that being the animating presence?
Yes, sure.
Okay.
And the animating presence is infinite mind.
Yeah.
Yeah. And the infinity of it is what's so valuable, because there's no area anywhere that isn't running the show.
Right.
So when you get in sync with that, you've got answers to problems. You've got lack of concern for anything, because it's all a point of view of perfect reality. All you have to do is pay attention to your seeing.
Yeah.
Who says it looks like a bush? Who says it looks like a dog? Who says any of that stuff? You make it up as you go.
Right.
Stop it,
Well, it's never going to stop, right? Like, you're never going to stop making stuff up. That's just the human condition.
Believing that thing originates.
Exactly. Here. That's what I'm saying, is catch yourself in thinking that all that stuff is causative somehow.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. Perfect.
Okay, very cool. All right. So then on page 26 and 27 of what is the idea? And again, we're talking about the ideas, not getting lost in the minutia, which is all part of the same thing.
Yep.
Margaret Laird wrote, "The idea of God makes it impossible to conceive of God at a distance and apart from one's own consciousness, one's own mind or soul or self."
Yeah. Being is one. So there isn't a God somewhere and me over here. There's only being itself being. And this is the way I'm seeing it at the moment.
Right.
The way it is not the way I see it. But the fact that I see anything at all means reality, or something is going on over there, which I call reality.
Right.
And it's very helpful in my everyday experience to let that be perfect and whole and complete and abundant and generous and loving and kind and supportive and all of that. That's where the well-being of my human point of view starts out. If I start with, let me think. If I start with the Betty and think she's got to make it good, then I'm in trouble, because Betty is a point of view of reality and has no capacity to make anything.
Right.
So the generative presence is what has Betty show up. And it's the generative presence that makes the difference in how I live.
Right.
Not anything Betty ever does. And the other thing Mrs. Laird used to always make clear was you can't improve. Your point of view changes and shifts all the time, but your being is whole, perfect, complete as the reflective presence of the God idea. So there's no improvement. There's no better condition, because perfection is the ground of being. So you give up on this trying to make Betty shape up. You leave Betty alone. She's just fine. And you be yourself.
And in that being, the look of Betty may improve.
Well, it has to, because of course, all that view is a report back to you how you're seeing yourself.
Got it.
So as you see yourself clearly, the Betty shapes up fine. Because she didn't have any really, that's the only reality she's got, is the presence of your being. you know?
Yeah.
And if that's perfect, when I see that more clearly, Betty shapes up.
Yeah.
Because she never had any other presence anyway.
Yeah.
And if she isn't shaping up, it's because I'm locked into that Betty's causative. And
Right.
that's a lie, and you can't live a lie.
Well, you can try. It'll just be super uncomfortable.
Give it a thought.
I'm just saying.
That's what she, back in the, I don't even know what the reference is in Science and Health, but Mrs. Eddy tells us that we should leave the mortal basis of belief.
Yeah.
And unite with the one mind. Well, that means leave it alone.
Right. Leave it alone. Let it be. Just quit fussing with it. And sometimes not fussing with it is one of the hardest things on the planet.
I know.
So it's not like, it's like, flip your fingers, that's it. But it can be really, if you're unwilling, it's going to be hardest on the planet. If you're willing, you can drop the argument. It becomes one of the easiest things.
Yeah. And the thing is, you think you know what you need to do to make Betty better. Betty thinks she knows what she needs to do.
Right.
That's the biggest fallacy. You've no idea what you need to do. You don't even know what you like. You don't even know what you want. You just think you know.
Right.
And so it's only when I can be myself, consciously aware, which is like a snap every once in a while, there you are. But it's only then that you have even a clue of who you are.
Right.
And that is so powerful that it shakes up your world. It shifts the whole thing.
Right.
It shifts who you're being every day, eating breakfast, for instance.
Yeah.
Whatever you're doing, because that shifts immediately when the facts are acknowledged.
Right. Right. And I'm reminded of this book too, I think is called In Pursuit of Happiness. And in the book, the author talks about, we all think we know what we want. So we strive for that future that we think we don't want. The problem is that who we are when we go into that future isn't the who we are that determined that would be the future we want.
That's true.
And so then you wonder why you work so hard and you get there and then you're just not happy. But you did all the right stuff to get yourself there. It's just that who you are now isn't the who you were that determined that was the future that you wanted. Anyways, it was just it's a funny thing. And you read this and it's literally based in science and everything else. Is like, no, we have no idea about that stuff. We just think we need to know because that's what everyone tells us. We need to be able to plan and, provide and get ready and all that kind of stuff. And it takes us out of the right now constancy of appearing, disappearing, appearing, disappearing, reappearing, like all that.
You're right on. I remember saying to Margaret, that's not what I want. She says, you have no idea what you want. And she was right. I think I know what I want, but Betty doesn't know.
Yeah. All right. So moving on then, in Science and Health on page 330, starting on line 11, Mary Baker Eddy said it this way. So, and what is the idea? Over here on the right side of the screen, Margaret Laird wrote, the idea of God makes it impossible to conceive of God at a distance and apart from one's own consciousness, one's own mind or soul or self. And that's what we've been talking about. Yeah. So belief versus reality, right? Yep. And so Mary Baker Eddy said it this way, God is infinite. Remember, infinite, no beginning, no end, infinite. The only life, substance, spirit, or soul, the only intelligence of the universe, including man.
Yep.
And then you, buddy, in your book, Mind is the Athlete, you say it this way, being is always real, perfect, and universal in nature. It is principle functioning, sourcing itself, and showing up as identity in the language appropriate to each situation.
Yeah. Is that where people can see it?
Yeah.
Good. It's a good sentence.
Yeah.
It's a lot of words, but it's right on.
Yeah, on page 192.
Yeah.
Because the thing is that and we've said this in previous episodes. So if you haven't watched those, go back and watch some of the previous episodes that we've been discussing. What is the idea?
Over 100 of them.
No, but for what is the idea? We haven't got 100. But the previous we talk about, you see your circumstances, and what you see you have is the only way you can see that one reality present. It's the point of view you've got on that one reality, and there's no accident that that's your point of view.
Because that's your stepping stone to the next.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's your own laboratory of self-discovering.
That's right.
So now, on this next set, on page 27, and what is the idea? Margaret Laird wrote, the understanding that being is mind, disclosing the infinity of good as thinking, demonstrates the universality of individual being, the all as one, and the all and the one as all.
Yep.
Mary
so
Baker.
It's always understanding that's the key.
Yes.
So Mrs. Laird says the understanding that being, disclosing the infinity of good, demonstrates individual living.
Right.
Yeah. It always, always, always. You come back, even as you read through Science and Health, you find that Mary Baker Eddy says it too. The key is understanding. It's the understanding of the facts of being that makes a difference. Not saying it, not wishing it were so, not thinking that it's a good idea, but really getting the sense that, hey, that's really the way it is. How about that?
Yeah, and just like when we were talking last week, you said to me, demonstration is the only thing that makes a great scientist.
Yeah. Yeah. If you don't demonstrate these principles for yourself, you haven't got any science to work with at all.
Right. Because that's where it lives.
Yeah, that's the only time you have some real freedom and a real grasp on who you are and what's going on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. In Science and Health on page 490, starting on line 23, Mary Baker Eddy says that idea this way. The scientifically Christian explanations of the nature and origin of man destroy all material sense with immortal testimony for acknowledgement.
Yeah.
This testimony ushers in the spiritual sense of being, which can be obtained in no other way.
And that's important to know. If you don't demonstrate it for yourself, you haven't got anything to work with. You can't get there on somebody else's shoestrings, or shirt tails, or whatever that word is. You have to be willing to put yourself on the line. I'm going to find out if this science has any helpful thing for me. I'm going to give it a try.
Yeah.
I'm going to let that thing be, that thing that says I'm not okay. I'm going to let that alone and just say, wait a minute, what's saying that's not okay? That's got to be the Betty.
Right.
Because the being stands in perfection. Right. So I'm going to say, okay, the Betty hasn't really got the capacity to do anything about this, but I'm standing in perfection. How can there be anything imperfect when the source is perfect? Mm-hmm. And just that, a glimpse of that as an understood idea is huge freedom.
Yeah. Yeah.
On you go.
Yes.
And then you go right back into thinking, well, Betty, you're in great shape now. Let's go,
That's right.
And you find another 2-second item where you can say, wait a minute, what's really true? And those little moments are what we call demonstrating the facts.
Right.
And as you do that, things shift all the way around.
Right.
That's called practicing science.
Yep. And in your book, Mind is the Athlete, on page 195, you wrote, the acknowledgement of facts allows the being giving rise to you and your world to do its thing of evolving. In this self-evolution of being, the language experience appears to disappear and reappear in fairer form.
Yep. It just appears to do that. It's actually a constant.
Yep.
In human living, it looks like something disappears and reappears in fairer form. But in reality, perfection's all there is.
Yep. All right. So we went a little bit over, a little bit longer than we normally go. I just do want to tell you that you can go out to the website at scientificmetaphysics.org. If you found this valuable, this conversation valuable, we would love it if you give us a thumbs up or a heart or whatever. And if you want to comment, please, we welcome all of your comments. We even look at them after the fact, after the live session. We're always monitoring them. So we would love any of that. Because it helps us get more exposure, which is, of course, all we're up to here with this and sharing these ideas. So with that, if you haven't subscribed to us yet on YouTube, I would highly recommend or invite you to go ahead and hit that subscribe button and give us a thumbs up. Until next week, we will be back with a new episode next week at 5 p.m. Pacific and 7 p.m. Central. So until then, enjoy distinguishing belief versus reality.
Yeah.
See you then.
Thanks.